On December 1, 1948, at around 6:30 a.m., the body of an unidentified man was discovered on Somerton Park beach in South Australia by two horseback riders near Glenelg, under bizarre circumstances that remained unexplained for over 70 years. The man was found lying motionless on the sand, with his head resting against the seawall, his legs extended, and his feet crossed. The horseback riders immediately alerted the police, who upon encountering the scene, described the body as being in excellent physical condition. The deceased wore a white shirt, a multicolored tie, brown trousers, socks and shoes, a brown knitted pullover, and a modish gray and brown jacket, reportedly of American tailoring. All labels on his clothes had been removed, and he had no wallet. He was clean-shaven, carried no identification, and appeared to be of European descent, estimated to be in his mid-40s. Despite his apparent age, he had a fit and athletic build, and showed no signs of violence or suffering. There were no obvious injuries or wounds that could indicate a cause of death. The only belongings found on him were an unused train ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach, a pack of cigarettes, a half-empty pack of chewing gum, and an aluminum comb manufactured in the U.S. Pathologist John Cleland from the Department of Pathology at the University of Adelaide, who investigated the case, made several notable observations and statements. Cleland noted that the man appeared to be of British appearance, standing 180 centimeters tall with gray eyes, ginger-colored hair, broad shoulders, and manicured nails. Additionally, the man's hands were well manicured, suggesting he likely took care of his personal grooming. His fit and athletic build hinted at an active lifestyle, possibly involving physical labor or sports. Despite publicly releasing pictures of the man in hopes of identification, days passed with no one stepping forward, except for some witnesses who claimed to have seen him lying at the same spot on the evening of November 30th. One significant witness was a couple who reported seeing the man around 7 p.m., noting that he extended his right arm fully, and then dropped it limply. Another couple observed him from 7:30 p.m. to 8 p.m., despite street lights coming on and mosquitoes buzzing around, they noticed no movement from the man, assuming he was either intoxicated or asleep. The autopsy revealed that the man had died around 2 a.m. on December 1st, suggesting he was still alive when witnesses saw him. Several abnormalities were noted, including severe congestion in the pharynx, stomach, both kidneys and liver, with the latter two completely filled with blood. His spleen was notably enlarged, approximately 3 times its normal size. While his heart was in perfect condition, his death was attributed to a heart attack, possibly due to poisoning. The last meal eaten by the man was suggested to be a pasty consumed just 3 to 4 hours before his death. Pathologist Dr. Dwyer concluded, "I am quite convinced the death could not have been natural. The poison I suggested was a barbiturate or a soluble hypnotic." Cedric Stanton Hicks proposed the theory that the man may have been killed using a potent poison, such as digitalis and Webb, which decomposed quickly after death, leaving no traces during the post-mortem examination. It was also suspected that the man might have been killed elsewhere, and then placed at the scene, but this remained speculative. Due to the lack of identification, removed clothing labels, and the possibility of poisoning, some investigators speculated that he was a Russian spy poisoned to death in Australia. Despite public appeals and extensive media coverage, no one could positively identify the man, and his dental records yielded no matches. By December 4th, police announced that his fingerprints were not on South Australian police records, prompting them to expand their search internationally. Even after thorough investigation, including forensic analysis and international inquiries, his identity, the circumstances of his death, and the meaning behind cryptic clues remain unresolved. As the man's body began to deteriorate, authorities called taxidermist Paul Lawson, who made a plaster cast of the man's face. A month after his death on January 14, 1949, police found a suitcase at the Adelaide railway station believed to belong to the same man checked in at 11 a.m. on November 30, 1948, the suitcase had all its labels removed, similar to the man's clothing. Inside were typical items, including a shaving brush, shoe polish, a knife, scissors, and assorted attire, some labeled with variants of the name T. Keen. A professional tailor determined the clothing was made in the United States, lending weight to the theory that the man was not local. Another notable item was orange wax thread, unavailable in Australia, matching the repair of the man's trousers pocket. Despite suspicions, no T. Keen was found to be missing from any English-speaking country. Months later, a piece of paper was found in the hidden pocket of the Somerton man's trousers, containing the Persian words, Tamám Shud, meaning, it is over, with the verso side completely blank. This discovery reignited the investigation, and after weeks of searching, it was determined that the scrap had been torn from the final page of a 1941 edition of Edward Fitzgerald's translation of Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, authored in the 12th century. The book from which the piece of paper with Tamám Shud written on it had been torn was reportedly found in an unlocked car parked on Jetty Road, Glenelg. It was discovered either in the rear floor well or on the back seat of the vehicle. However, there is some discrepancy regarding the timing of the discovery. One newspaper article suggests that it was found about a week or two before the body was discovered, while former South Australian Police Detective Jerry Feltus stated that it was found shortly after the body was found on the beach. This was the exact book the police were looking for. This copy had its last page torn and the two pages exactly matched, indicating that it was the man who removed the page. At the back of this book, police found 5 lines of scrawled code, written in capital letters, with the second line cut out. Investigators and code experts were never able to decode it, and to this day, the code remains a mystery. However, in 2004, Jerry theorized that the final line could stand for the initials of, "It's time to move to South Australia, Mosley Street." A 2014 analysis by computational linguist John strongly supports the theory that the letters consist of the initials of some English text, but finds no match for these in a large survey of literature, and concludes that the letters were likely written as a form of shorthand. Another unusual detail in the book was the phone number of a woman who turned out to be Jessica Ellen Jo Thompson, a 27-year-old nurse, who lived a 5-minute walk away from the location where the man's body was found. Many speculated that the woman was a lover of the man, however she denied any relations with him. In 1949, Jessica Thompson requested the police not to keep a permanent record of her name in the Somerton Man's case, stating that it would be embarrassing and harmful to her reputation to be linked to such a case. The police agreed, but believed that she was reluctant to talk about him and might know more. After Jessica's denial, they were stumped because they had no other leads, and the case had now hit a brick wall. However, shortly after Jessica became involved in the case, some witnesses reported seeing her in the vicinity of Somerton Beach on the day of the man's death, and there were reports of her having a mysterious connection to a man who matched the Somerton man's description. According to Lean, he described Jessica's reaction upon seeing the cast as completely taken aback, to the point of giving the appearance that she was about to faint, while some years later, Paul Lawson, the technician who made the cast and was present when Jessica viewed it, noted that after looking at the bust, she immediately looked away and never looked at it again. The nature of the relationship between Jessica Thompson and the Somerton man is unclear and subject to speculation. Some theories suggest that they may have been romantically involved, while others proposed that they were both international spies and were working together. Once again, the investigation came to a halt with no evidence to support the cause of death, and the Somerton man was buried in Adelaide Cemetery in 1949 with a tombstone that read, "Here lies the unknown man who was found at Somerton Beach." By early February 1949, there had been 8 different positive identifications of the body, but none of them proved to be accurate upon further investigation. The perplexing nature of the case only deepened when by November 1953, police announced they had received the 251st solution to the identity of the body from members of the public, who claimed to have met or known him. In June 1949, the case was once again at the forefront, after the discovery of a 2-year-old child named Clive Magnuson's body in a sack in Largs Bay, just 20 kilometers away from Somerton Park. Clive was found alongside his unconscious father Keith Magnuson, after being missing for 4 days. Despite extensive investigation, the cause of Clive's death remained undetermined. Roma Magnuson, Clive's mother, reported being threatened by a masked man, driving a cream car, and believed the threats might be connected to her husband's efforts to identify the Somerton Man, whom he believed could be a former colleague named Carl Thompson. Shortly after being interviewed by the police regarding the harassment she endured, Roma suffered a mental collapse and required severe medical attention. A couple of days into Roma's interview, J.M. Gower, the secretary of the Largs North Progress Association, and A.H. Curtis, the acting mayor of Port Adelaide, both received anonymous phone calls. Gower was warned that Mrs. Magnuson would meet with an accident if he intervened, while Curtis was threatened with consequences if he got involved in the Magnuson affair. However, no harm was ever done, and some speculated the calls were hoaxes, but many believed the opposite as well. Years after the Somerton Man's death, revelations surfaced from Ina Harvey, who was a receptionist at the Strathmore Hotel across from Adelaide railway station. Harvey recalled a peculiar guest who had occupied room 21 or 23 for several days before checking out on November 30, 1948. Described as an English speaker, the man was remembered to be carrying a small black case, but it was too late for the police to conduct any investigation that could yield confirmed results. In May 2009, dental experts revealed that the Somerton Man exhibited hypodontia, a rare genetic condition seen in only 2% of the population. Mache Henneberg, a professor of anatomy at the University of Adelaide, conducted a thorough analysis of the Somerton Man's ears, and revealed that the man's upper ear hollow was notably larger than his lower ear hollow, another rare trait found in just 1 to 2% of the Caucasian population. This unique combination of ear structure and dental abnormalities became pivotal in the investigation, when in June 2010, investigators revealed that Jessica Thompson's eldest son Robin shared the same distinct ear characteristics and hypodontia as the unidentified man. This aligned with previous claims made by Kate Thompson, who stated that her mother Jessica was aware of the Somerton Man, and speculated that her deceased mother might have been a Russian spy, as Jessica knew the Russian language, whereas no one else in the family had ever learned Russian. Not only Kate, but Roma Egan, the widow of Jessica's son Robin, and their daughter Rachel Egan, also asserted that the Somerton Man was Robin's father, and thus Rachel's grandfather. Despite their claims, no confirmed conclusions were reached. Meanwhile, Derek Abbott was able to analyze the Somerton Man's DNA using hair that had been preserved when authorities made a plaster model of his face. He collaborated with U.S. forensic expert Colleen Fitzpatrick, and together they constructed an extended family tree using the DNA. The pair generated a DNA profile from 4,000 names, ultimately narrowing it down to one name, Carl Webb, who had mysteriously vanished from public records in April 1947. Subsequently, they attempted to locate the man's living relatives, however none of them were able to identify Carl. Carl was born in Melbourne in 1905, and was an electrical engineer from a family of 6 siblings, none of whom were alive at the time. He was believed to have German roots, and Abbott suggested that he may have been wearing American clothes from his brother-in-law when he died. Carl's eldest sister, Frida, had a son named John, who died in World War II in 1943. John's possessions included American coins and a map of Chicago, suggesting that he had resided in the U.S. at some point. Abbott speculated that this would explain why the Somerton Man was wearing clothes of American origin with the name Keane on them, as they could have been handed down to him from his brother-in-law or nephew. Carl Webb was known to have married Dorothy Robertson on October 4, 1941. She described Carl as a simple man who would be in bed by 7 p.m., had no friends, and was a loner who spent his time reading or writing poetry about death, which can be seen in the book Rubaiyat, a poetic book related to death, the same book whose piece of paper the man had in his pocket. However, Carl's marriage to Dorothy didn't last long, as she claimed to suffer from domestic violence and abuse from her husband. The only puzzlement Abbott had was about why a local engineer would have come to Australia, for which he said, "We have evidence that he had separated from his wife, and that she had moved to South Australia, so possibly, he had come to track her down." While Abbott is convinced of his findings, the South Australian police, who are conducting the official investigation into the case, have yet to verify Abbott's findings, which could finally provide a name to the unidentified man after over 70 years.